Hello, BookTube. Well, we continue on with our read-along of Homer's Iliad. I read the Iliad every June, and it's been a delight to have company. For once, to have company rereading the Iliad. This time around, I'm sort of sticking. Last year when I reread the Iliad, I jumped around from translation to translation. I always read the Iliad in English. In June, I should stress. And I read the Odyssey in August, also in English. But this year, I'm sticking with the Robert Fitzgerald translation, which for a long time was my favorite and my go-to recommendation. And I've been kind of struck by some of Fitzgerald's choices. You know, when you read multiple translations of the Iliad, you become aware of the different choices that the translators are making. Are they trying to make it a smooth reading experience? Are they trying to make it sound a little more contemporary than usual? Are they doing whatever it is that Alexander Pope is doing? And they're doing it in these booming rhymed couplets. How close are they sticking to the Greek? Is it an awkward reading experience? Are they cutting corners? There's a new Iliad translation almost every year, and I eagerly eat them all up to see those differences. You know, because I have been doing this for a long time, and for a long time, Chapman's Iliad was my favorite one, and that has vied for that spot with the Pope Iliad and also Fitzgerald from time to time. Fitzgerald has some translating decisions of his own that you just have to go with it when it's a translator. You just have to go with their decisions and see whether or not it works, whether or not they can make it work. And Fitzgerald's is to do a kind of a very very anachronistic sounding kind of stilted English poetry with tons and tons of diacritical marks that he has to know that most of his readers are not going to understand or abide by or know. But it's designed to make the contents look just a little bit unfamiliar. He also works around the names a bit. There is no Achilles in this book, for instance. He works around the names a bit, puts in K's instead of CH's, puts in that sort of stuff to sort of distance you just a bit, rock you back just a bit, to remember that this is a very old and very strange poem. And sometimes that diction works. I think, in fact, a lot of times it does. There's a scene, we're reading the next 6 books in the Iliad today, and very soon, very early on in those 6 books, I'm going to try to remember to use the Greek names for the gods here. You have to excuse me. I learned all of this stuff with Roman names. I'm going to try. I got a lot of emails from people saying, "Who are you talking about?" It's hard enough for us to follow along without you jumping names. I'm going to try to remember. The king of the gods, Zeus, early on in the 6 books that we're reading today, calls the other gods together. He doesn't want anyone else interfering in the war. He wants it to just play out. He's kind of sort of in favor of the Trojans, and he wants it to just sort of play out. Doesn't want anyone contravening his will, like we'd seen in earlier books. He wants the gods to confine themselves to watching, to Mount Olympus, and he addresses them all to tell them that in no uncertain terms. Fitzgerald has it like this. This is at the beginning of book 8. Dawn in her saffron robe came spreading light on all the world, and Zeus, who plays in thunder, gathered the gods on peaked Olympus's height, then said to that assembly, "Listen to me, immortals, every one, and let me make my mood and purpose clear. Let no one, god or goddess, contravene my present edict. All assent to it, that I may get this business done and quickly. If I catch sight of anyone slipping away with a mind to assist the Danaans or the Trojans, he comes back blasted without ceremony, or else he will be flung out of Olympus into the murk of Tartarus that lies down deep in the underworld. Iron the gates are, brazen the door slab, and the depth from hell as great as heaven's utmost height from earth. You may learn then how far my power puts all gods to shame. Or prove it this way. Out of the zenith hang a golden line, and put your weight on it, all gods and goddesses. You will not budge me earthward out of heaven. Cannot budge the all-highest, mighty Zeus, no matter how hard you try. But let my hand once close to pull that cable. Up you come, and with you earth itself comes, and the sea. By one end tied around Olympus's top, I could let all the world swing in mid-heaven. That's how far I overwhelm you all, both gods and men." They were all awed and silent. He put it with such power. And they timidly speak up. His favorite, Athena, does first. And He gentles right away after he's stormed at them. He's gentle right away and says, "I just want it clear, you are not to interfere." And back on the battlefield, there's a lot happening. We get these interludes up on Olympus, but on the battlefield, one of the first things that happens in the books that we're reading today is yet another single combat. This time between Hector, Prince Hector, the greatest of the Trojan warriors, and the larger of the two Greek soldiers named Ajax, a gigantic, towering figure of a man who makes even Hector quail a little when he steps out for single combat. When single combat is announced, the first person who naturally wants to fight Hector is Menelaus, the husband of Helen, the wounded husband whose a grievance against Troy started the whole thing and launched the 1,000 ships, because Menelaus was the brother of the High King of Greece. But Menelaus' brother, Agamemnon, tells him, "You're no match for Hector. Why you'd be throwing your life away? What is this nonsense? Take your armor off." And no one else seems at first willing to step forward. Keep in mind, Achilles, the greatest of the Greek warriors, is sulking in his tents with his men. He's not present for any of this. We have to believe that he would step forward, although in this instance we're told that Hector gives even him pause. And Nestor, the oldest person at Troy, the oldest of the Greeks, I should say, because I doubt that he's older than Priam. I don't think anybody's older than Priam, but Nestor has been around for generations of heroes and berates the Greeks for being cowardly. This is only one man. What happened to your famous courage and whatnot? And that's when Ajax steps forward. And they have a combat, him and Hector. And it's a little bit unclear how long that combat lasts. They throw spears, then they duel with spears. And Hector never manages to hurt Ajax. Whereas Ajax manages to hurt Hector. He draws blood on Hector's throat. A symbol, a foreshadowing of what is to come. When you see, as somebody told me a long time ago, if you see a picture of a hoplite helmeted warrior from ancient times who has any kind of damage being done to his throat, you know it's Hector. But they're still fighting. And apparently the end of the fight is not for sure when the Greeks and Trojans both call it off because night is falling. And hostilities are not supposed to extend past nightfall, which is going to be important in these 6 books, as we'll see. But that single combat could be viewed kind of as a way for the Greeks and Trojans to... They are still tentatively probing to find out if there's any way that they can stop this war. Is there any way that they can stop the war? This is the second single combat that we've seen. And it's quickly followed by embassies asking, from the Trojans asking, can we make reparations? We won't give you Helen, but can we make reparations of some other kind to call this all off? And also, one way or another, whether we can do that or not, would you be willing to give us a little interval, a little sort of ceasefire to bury our dead, to burn our dead, to deal with to recover just a bit from the carnage that has been happening? Of course, the Greeks want that same pause, so they agree. And another point in these books that we're reading, I'm not going to call him Ulysses, Odysseus and Diomedes, at the behest of Nestor. It's Nestor's idea. They go on a night raid into an outlying Trojan camp. They capture a man and sweat him for information. And they get a lot of tactical information, and then they kill him. So not only are they conducting warfare by night, but they are breaking the oaths of honorable behavior in warfare. They assure the guy that they will not kill him, and then they do, and they kill all of his men. And I'm pretty sure that Homer knows what he wants you to think of things like that. I'm pretty sure that he does. But he hammers it home in the following books, because with only a few setbacks, for instance, this is one of the rare instances, these 6 books are one of the rare instances in the Iliad where Prince Paris, who started the whole thing by abducting Helen, actually pulls something like his own weight in combat. It's one of the only times where that happens. But things start to go poorly for the Greeks. One after another of their great chieftains sustains wounds. They're not killed. They're not they don't get limbs cut off or anything. But they have to withdraw from combat. One after another of them does. And they build ramparts. They increased their stationary defenses around their ships at their beachhead. But as these 6 books end, that does not seem good enough. Hector is absolutely triumphant. He and his Trojans are rampant on the field. They are even breaching those new ramparts. It seems that Zeus's decision to pull all the other gods out of combat and let things go as they will is going to work in Troy's favor. And that's where these 6 books end. They end with the Trojans absolutely triumphant, and looking like they're going to destroy the Greeks, like they're going to break the rampart, run rampant among the ships themselves. Keep in mind, if you burn these ships, the Greeks have no way to go home, and can be just routed like rabble. So it's a very combat heavy 6 books, but there are interludes. Like the last 6 books, there are interludes. The Night Raid is one of those, and there are a couple of others. And once again, as in these read-alongs, I have the precious resource of a whole bunch of people who are reading this, who maybe haven't read it before or are rereading it for the first time in a long time, and that's you. And I want to know everything that you thought about these 6 books. I'm assuming that you didn't have any trouble like the kind that would have been represented by the catalog of ships in the first 6 books. There are no other times, in my opinion, where Homer nods. There are no other times in the Iliad where your patience as a reader will be tested. I'm assuming that is the case here, that you just thought I'm assuming that you thought these 6 books gave you almost no time to catch your breath. And I'm hoping that you liked that experience. So let me know. Let's talk all about it in the comments field, and we will move on next week to the next 6 books. It was pointed out to me that if we do 6 books every weekend, thanks to the random disposition of June's calendar, we will have an extra weekend. So maybe we ought to think about working something else in there. That would be a lot of fun. I'm happy to take suggestions if that's true. I can't remember. I meant to check a calendar and see if that's true, but generally speaking, that's the sort of thing that I don't know and you do. So if that's true, if we're gonna wind up, if we do 6 books of the Iliad every weekend, are we going to end up with an extra weekend in June? And if that's true, what do you want to do in that weekend? We could arrange a quick read along, or what about a quick Q&A? You always seem to love that, and we've got plenty of time to have those things to me to make a separate video and accumulate those questions. Just a for no reason at all Q&A, or whatever you want to do. If it turns out we have that extra weekend, we have a Sunday. So what are we going to do for that Sunday? But in the meantime, tell me what you thought of these 6 books. Tell me what you thought of that Night Raid, and a whole bunch of other things. Just whatever struck you about these 6 books. I'm going to wrap this up for now. But I'll be back next week. We'll just continue with the Iliad. This is so much fun for me. And I think I'm going to stick with Fitzgerald. I think it's just going to be a Fitzgerald read-along for me. But again, I also want to know what you're reading, what translation you're reading, and whether or not it's continuing to please you, or you're having problems with it. We should talk about translation a little. But there's so much else to talk about here for this. So I'll be back next Sunday. We'll talk more about Homer. Thank you, BookTube.